I died and got trapped as a ghost. You won't believe what happened next. My tale stands apart from the usual yarns folks spin. It all began in that peculiar space between lives, where I had my initial brush with what comes after. Picture this: clouds drifting in a way you've never seen on Earth, gracefully pirouetting in the sky, holding my gaze for what felt like days. Yet, before I knew it, 10 days had slipped by, and a voice chimed in, saying I had another 10,000 years to go. Then came a scene straight out of myth, a colossal golden edifice bustling with figures draped in robes, chatting beneath streams of radiant gold. A woman stood guard by imposing doors labelled King of Kings and Lord of Lords with the words "I am the Alpha" and the Omega etched nearby. She announced God awaited my audience. Inside, I knelt before the divine, who bid me stand. There, I was bestowed a new name, whispered by God's own lips. Alas, the name, its significance, faded like a distant dream upon waking, God's visage obscured by a brilliance akin to the sun. Memories blur from there. I recall a warning. That departure meant forsaking my former life. Despite pleas to linger, I eagerly chose to depart. Then, flashes of my return to life, from the sanctuary of my mother's womb to the harsh lights of a delivery room. Details flood in the nurse, the doctor's words, the chill in the air. Birth, marked by cries and the loving presence of kin. Skipping forward, my second departure differs from the norm. I sat in the back seat of my mother's car, resisting the embrace of a seatbelt. She drove, and suddenly I was seized by a fit of coughing, deep and unyielding. My mother's voice pierced the haze, her concern palpable. Coughing gave way to gasping, like a swimmer surfacing for air. Then, silence. I had a sudden urge to escape the confines of the belt, passing through it, as if it were air. Standing between the seats, I saw another passenger, a child, motionless. Attempts to rouse me failed. Panic ensued as my mother's friend searched for signs of life. Pulse non-existent, breath absent. The grim reality settled in, they deemed me gone. Their voices, fraught with disbelief, echoed in the car. Yet in that moment I felt oddly at peace, detached from the tumult unfolding around me. I glanced at my hands, noticing a strange transparency, like they weren't entirely solid. Curious, I swiped my hand through the passenger's arm, startling her with a shiver. She muttered about the cold, puzzled by the odd sensation. Then, a voice broke the silence, announcing it was time to depart. Suddenly I tumbled through the floor of the car and onto the street, right by Sonic. Panic crept in momentarily, but before I could dwell, I shot upwards at a dizzying pace. Clouds whizzed by, and in the blink of an eye, I beheld the earth in all its grandeur. I paused to marvel for a brief moment before hurtling backward through a tunnel, faster than before. My journey took me to a colossal planet, orbiting it briefly before veering off again. As I sped through a tunnel, I noticed a smaller one attached, seemingly pulling someone in with its dark allure. Instinctively I swam towards it, but a voice warned against it, urging me away. Hand in hand with a fellow traveller, we approached a radiant figure atop a cloud, with a luminous hand beckoning us. Settling on a cloud myself, I observed a gathering in the distance, a mix of figures joined in unity. A reassuring voice called out to me, dispelling fear. Approaching the voice, I witnessed a distant figure kneeling in prayer on a massive cloud. Despite the distance, every detail was clear. The voice urged me closer, noticing the mist enveloping my form, a sign of my in-between state. She explained the anomaly, the need for my return to Earth due to a mistake. Promising a return someday, she bid farewell as I plummeted back towards Earth. Landing back in my body, I awoke to the familiar surroundings, as if nothing had occurred. I died and saw galaxies discover the secrets of the afterlife. Late one night, when I was around 17, I found myself in a car crash with my sisters and a friend behind the wheel. We were heading back from a club, tired but wired from the night's adventures. Suddenly, another car came speeding, jolting our friend and sending us careening into a tree. In the chaos, I realized our friend was out cold. Panic surged as I tried to call out to my sisters, but no words escaped my lips. I knew I had to act fast to get us help. Summoning all my strength, I pried open the door and helped my sisters out. Thankfully, some kind souls stopped to assist, even offering us their taxi to reach the hospital. But there was confusion. I thought both my sisters were with me, only to discover later that one was still at the crash site. At the hospital, everything felt like a whirlwind. Nurses rushed us to the ER, urgency thick in the air. Despite feeling no pain, I was consumed by worry for my sister Pam, who was by my side. But as I tried to communicate, I found my voice failing me. I couldn't even recall my boyfriend's name or number when I needed him most. The whole situation felt like a hazy dream, disorienting and surreal. A male nurse gently insisted I get into a wheelchair, but I refused until I could see Pam. When I finally did, her words shook me apparently. There was a hole in my forehead. It was then that exhaustion and coldness enveloped me, despite feeling oddly detached from any real harm. As they wheeled me into the operating room, I shivered uncontrollably, the cold seeping into my bones. The doctor's voice was distant as he asked me questions, the room spinning around me. He instructed me to count, but my mind drifted as sleep beckoned. Even as I fought to stay awake, the world seemed to lose its weight. I marveled at the sensation of feeling my toes, wondering why the medical staff didn't stop me from moving. Then, suddenly I felt weightless, as if I was floating away from it all. I recall a sensation of weightlessness, as if I was being carried by a gentle breeze, floating effortlessly. Inside the theatre room, I watched from above as doctors and nurses worked frantically on my body. It felt surreal, like I was experiencing something entirely different from the stories I'd heard about death. Turning my gaze to the wall beside me, I sensed something approaching. Suddenly, a star descended from the ceiling, stopping beside my leg. Without control over my body, I floated to sit upon it, observing the scene below. My sister was in another room, receiving care for her broken arm. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of peace. There was no sadness or fear, only overwhelming joy and love. It was unlike anything I'd ever known, a pure acceptance and merging into a vortex of love. It felt like coming home, a relief from all burdens, a sanctuary of perfect serenity. As I gazed upon the hospital and then Singapore below, I knew I didn't want to return to earthly life. This was where I belonged, immersed in this blissful state. Promising myself I wouldn't go back, the star carried me further, offering breathtaking views of the planet, the sun, the moon, and the entire galaxy. Despite the vastness of it all, I remained calm, relaxed, and filled with joy. Even as the star journeyed on, I felt no fear, no trace of my former fear of heights. It was an exhilarating ride, far surpassing any roller coaster, and I relished every moment. Lost in the breathtaking beauty of the galaxy, its vibrant colors and dazzling lights held me spellbound. Despite the absence of anyone around me, a soft, comforting voice echoed in the void, telling me it wasn't my time to return home. I resisted, adamant about staying, but the voice persisted, urging me to go and enjoy myself. Its gender eluded me, but its gentle tone was persuasive. Desperate to stay, I clung to the star, but suddenly I felt a force pulling me downward. As I hurtled towards Earth, the sights blurred by in a dizzying rush. From the expanse of the galaxy to the familiar lights of Singapore, I descended, passing through ceilings until I collided back into my body with a jolt. Slowly, I regained consciousness, aware that what I'd experienced wasn't a dream. Yet I kept the encounter to myself, uncertain if others would believe me. It was a glimpse of what people called unconditional love, a moment I cherished despite its mystery. If you're curious about similar near-death experiences, I recommend watching the story of a woman declined entry to heaven, as explained by God. It's a fascinating exploration of the afterlife.